So after you arrange your files, that's the first, so you resize them, step number one. Arrange them on a new document, step number two. You're going to want to save it, so if you haven't saved it already, you're going to make sure you go File, Save As. And so now we're on to step three here, which is the warping. And to warp, so you basically have them lined up. I'm going to zoom in here and get a little bit closer. And I'm going to start with the bottom layer. And so I like to turn off everything but the two I'm going to work on. So when you start warping and getting these photos to line up exactly, I tend to leave the picture underneath, that layer one alone. Sometimes when they're really distorted, you need to work with both pictures. I really try to avoid that. And I try to just work with the photo that's on top. I mean, if you were going to do this professionally, you would probably work with both photos on that seam. But in the long run, you can mess up the photo underneath this one. So if we had three photos here, one on the right side where this gap is, if I start warping this photo that's underneath, that's going to mess up my warp from before. And so you have to be really careful doing that. So I highly recommend just warping the one that's on top. And so we're going to work here mostly with layer 2. So I start just with the Move tool again, and I come in here, and the top is going to be too high, the bottom is going to be too low, and the middle will hopefully be just right. And so I'm going to try to find the middle of this photo and get that lined up. Another handy feature is lowering the opacity. So I come over here to the opacity and lower that down so I can see through the top layer. And I can also use the arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge that in place. And I'm going to try to line up that black light post. I'll give you a little paint here. I'm trying to line up right here is the area I'm working with. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to leave the opacity down a little bit here for a minute, and then I'll turn it back up as I get closer. So a lot of people get really concerned with the whole picture and aligning up every crack and I just work with the edge. You're not going to see this over here, so I really just stick to the edge. So to warp, you go Edit, Transform, Warp, and you get this grid. It looks like the rule of thirds, and you take it and you can move just part of the picture. And so I take that and I try to line up the top, and then I try to line up the bottom. And so now I'm going to go hit the checkbox up here and turn that opacity back up. And the flag doesn't look quite right. The building is leaning a little bit, and this puddle definitely doesn't look right. So I'm going to come back in here and go Edit. And you can do this as many times as you want. Edit, Transform, Warp. I just try to make little adjustments, and then I hit OK. Saves them so I don't lose my progress if I did something good. So the puddle is looking pretty fantastic right about there. And now the building's getting messed up from that one. So try to, oops, come on little guy. You can do it. So that needs to go over there. Ooh, that looks good. Ooh, ooh. And then the flag, I'm going to try to tuck, oh, that hurt. And then pull this back up. And then pull this one down. Looks pretty good. I just have a little mess up right there. Warp that one more time. See if I can get a migraine. And Ooh, ooh, oh, look at that snow right there. Tap that up. Come on, little guy. Jackpot. Okay, so there is one warp, and you need to do all of your warps. And so right to left, left to right, whatever it is, you're always working on the top layer. And so you're going to warp all of your photos. And now I get a lot of people who are very concerned and that want to take care of this line right away. That's the next step. Do not work on that line until you warp all of your pictures. So after you get them warped, save your file. And then we'll start with masking.